Okay, so we have our pieces and we're going to make one set white and one set black. And we're also going to make the board and place it on there and shine a light on it so you can experience doing all the things. Okay, so this is going to require that we open up the materials editor and you can hit M, which is also this button here. You can toggle this, but M is the shortcut for this. I'm just going to size it here. So I'm going to go ahead and delete that. I don't, it's left over from something. Okay, so we're going to use standard. We're going to do a quick scan letter or a scan line renderer, which is a quick renderer that you can do in Max just to test things out. And since we're just rendering things right now, later you'll start to have classes that teach you how to light things if you're in animation for rendering out scenes for a feature or show or whatever. In games, you will take these things into a game engine, so you will learn the lighting things there. And then in the texture classes, you should be, the competencies of that are unwrapping your models and texturing them, as well as setting them up properly with the proper textures for the proper renderer. So you can see over here, there's ray trace, architectural. These are some of the different scanline situations. There are also other renderers, I think. Right, so I have V-Ray, so that's another renderer. There should be, I might have to go in and get the plugin for Arnold, but Arnold is also a new renderer. These are all, materials are based on their renderer. So we're going to use the scanline renderer, so we're going to use the standard material. So I'm just going to drag this out here. And I can select this group and give it this material, assigned to object. Okay. Oh, I'm sorry. I should have said to selection. Assign to selection. Yes, it'll do them all. Okay. So when I put this material on here, double click on this and it will give me the attributes for this material. We'll look in here like this. First of all, I don't like how there's a green line there. So I would select these and actually I'm going to do it to all of them. I'm going to make a black line here. So this is how they will look. This is also going to have a black material on it, so, but that's fine. We could select these like this and maybe choose something that is just slightly not black. So when we do put the black material on there, we'll see it as a lighter gray color. It looks black right now, but that's only in to contrast to that skin color. Okay. So I'm going to double click on my fuse and let's see, was this the, these are the white ones. Okay. So we'll double click on this to get the color picker for our diffuse. I'm going to bring that up and say okay. Also, this is our specular levels, so I'm going to bring that up because it should be a super shiny plastic material. If I zoom in, I'll just make this a little bit bigger. You can see when, if I were to lessen this, it goes flat. Or if I were to bring that out, it's a more dull, less shiny. It looks like more of a matte finish, if you will. So if we bring this in to be very tiny, very shiny, it starts to have a plastic look to it. All right. So what I'm going to do is I can take this, hold shift, and make a copy of it. And I'm going to select these and give this to the copy, assign to selection. Okay. And now make sure I have this selected. So I double click on the word up here. If you just double click on the sphere, it's just going to make that bigger. So you want to double click on the word and get this dotted line around it. All right, so I'm going to say black. Okay, so now you can see the line in there is not quite black. It's shiny enough that I can see it's light enough from black that I can see the edge loops or the edges on it. All right. So now we have our pieces like that. Both very shiny plastic. All right, what we need to do next is make our, I'm going to hit G for the grid. What we need to do next is make our board. So I'm just going to move, oops. Let's make sure I have that constraint. I'm going to move those off. I'm going to make the board here. I'm going to hit F for front, and we're going to make this board similarly to how we made our first pawn by using the line tool to get a shape of the board. I'll show you, and then you can understand what I mean. So again, I'm going to start here. I will click. This is going to be the basic shape of my board. I'm going to right click to end it. Okay. I am going to get my move tool and my snaps, and I'm going to make sure that, let's get over to my vertices. I'm going to grab this vertex and make sure it snaps to the grid. It turns green when it's there. So I'm just going to use this as my guide for this. It should be 0. Get out of here. This one should be 0 all the way across and 0. This one, zeros. This one, okay, very well. I'm going to leave this one. I'm going to snap that so that this is straight. Now I'm going to get out of snaps. And I'm going to make this a Bezier corner so that I can bring this off without this curving. I want this to remain straight, so I only want one handle for this. I'm going to set up my interpolations to 10 so that can be a little smoother there. I'm going to grab this one and go ahead and make it a Bezier. Can make that kind of a sharper curve. I'll do that to this too. Make it a little bit of a sharper curve. And then maybe this Bezier corner. Just to do it, right? Okay. Get out of that. Now I'm going to go to my modifier list. And I'm going to get Lathe. Lathe. And I will say minimum. All right, but we don't want 16 sides. We want 4. And everything else is fine. That will work. Okay, so what I'm going to do now is collapse all. Sometimes this will turn into an editable mesh. We just change it to an editable poly. I'm going to get my vertice. We need to do the same thing we did to the pawn, and that is now we will weld this. And it looks like what happened was the normals are flipped. I grab this one. I can click weld now because I know that the threshold will be fine. Okay, so to flip our normals now after we've already done this is to get to our polygon. I can say Control A, that selects all of them. And right here we can say flip. So now we have it in the proper way. All right, I'm going to make this a little bit bigger as an object, not a... I'm going to move this first. See how the pivot point is over here left over from our line. I'm going to go to the Hierarchy tab, Affect Pivot Point, Center to Object, get out of that, and go back to my modifier. All right, and I want to make this bigger, but I only want it to be bigger in terms of its depth and width. So I'm going to pull it only on the X and Y so that it's not going to go up, right? So, oops, I hit the window button. Only on the X and Y. I'll make it something like that. All right, that looks like maybe that's a little too big. Something like that. Okay, cool, cool, cool. All right, so we have this nice polygonal situation here where we don't necessarily need these edges because this is a quad. So I'm going to go to the Edge tool. I'm not going to double click on this. Let me get my cue. I'm not going to double click on this because I don't want, if I double click on it, you see it'll go all the way through. So I don't want that. I just want these. And I'm going to remove these, but I need to hit the remove button and the control key at the same time so that it gets rid of any vertices. So I click my vertex and I know I don't see anything here. If I only hit remove, I'll have that vertex in the center there, and I don't want that. I'm going to go to my polygon tool and if this isn't selected, make sure that that is what you have. Actually, no, not yet. Let's add the modifier. I have buttons here that I've set. You can do that through this key. You configure modifier sets. If I say don't show buttons, that's probably what you see. You could show buttons. And if you want to make your own button set, you can configure modifier sets, and you can see here I have my buttons. I will put this one back. You could say however, actually, no, let me cancel that. I will make 9 buttons. I'll make 10 buttons. I hit enter, so it went away. So here are your buttons, and let's say I wanted a bend modifier in here. I already have one. Let's say I want I have symmetry. Let's say I already have morpher. Geez, what do I want? Let's say I want lathe. I can just put it there, right? And I can say okay. I can save it, say okay, and then it'll be here, right? Say okay. There's lathe. It would show it better. You can, if I say don't show and then show, it's being a little funky. I think there's a little buggy. This is 2020, it's a little buggy. But anyway, that's how you make your buttons. I'm going to configure my buttons. I don't want this. I'm going to say 8. There, back to what I want. All right, so to this editable poly, we're going to add a unwrap UVW. So I'm going to click on that. And this yellow line, it's planar right now, indicates the kind of projection that we're going to try to get. So right now, this is the planar map, and you can see how it is. I can say fit, but it's because if I go in the top view, you'll see when we lathed this, it lathed it from our front view. So here was our line, and it went around 4 times. So that's why it looks like a diamond shape in this situation. So what I'm going to do, the easiest thing to do is line this up. So let me go back to my editable poly. I'm going to get my snaps tool, my rotate, and snap it. Why is it not snapping? Oh, because that's the wrong one. Make sure it's the arc snap. There we go. So now I can go 45 degrees. And now it's the proper, it's lined up parallel and perpendicular to the axes, as opposed to being diamond shape, which is 45 degrees off. All right, so unwrap. Now we can go back to our planar, and now you'll see it is mapping this nicely. There's our projection. Let's just do this one for now. Actually, what I think I'll do to make this even simpler is to detach this. Let's click on that. And we can say, come down here to detach. And this is going to be the actual board. Let's see, what do I want to call this? I'll call this board checker. Okay. This one is going to be called board platform. Okay. And this one, we don't need the UV because I'm going to show you a different one for that. Okay, so what we're going to deal with is this board. And for now, I'm going to make it a different color so that you can see that these are, in fact, two different things. Okay, let's get back to this. I'm going to select this board, and I'm going to say unwrap UVW. And move this down to where it has projection and say the plane. 9 times out of 10, you'll be using the plane, or maybe this box, but you'll get to that in your texture classes. For now, just follow along. All right, so we have this. Then we need to scroll up and let's see, make sure that's right. Then we'll scroll up to Open UVW Editor, and here we have that plane. All right, so what we want to add to this, I'm just going to go ahead and close this because this is fine for what this is. So I'm going to collapse all. Yes. So there we are. Again, I'm going to hit M for material editor. Let's bring out another standard here. And what we're going to add to this, to our diffuse color, is a checker. Scroll down here. So here's our maps. These are procedural maps, which means that they're computationally created. They don't rely on a bitmap texture. I kind of think of them as my vector. Procedural is sort of like a vector in terms of a 2D image. These have more capabilities in a 3D sense. In other words, they'll go all the way through if you need them to create more of a solid looking piece. Not that you can't do that with textures, but it's not relying on textures. It's relying on a mathematical algorithm to create itself. So here we're going to use checker. I'm going to pull this out and I'm going to attach this node to the diffuse node. We can take this and apply it to our board checker, it says. That's what we want. We won't see it until, I'm going to click on this and make sure that's what I've selected to see, is this button, show selected material in viewport. So I click that and we have our checkers. All right, well, so far so good, but we need more, right? So I'm going to double click on this map, and here are some attributes that we can utilize within this map. And one of those would be the tile. This is using real world scale. I'm going to turn that off because we're not using real world scale. We'll just use the scale that I don't think I set a scale, did I? We did centimeters. We don't want real world. That's like feet and inches and architectural bits. So here's our tiling. So if I were in class, I would ask you questions such as, how many do we have? But there are 64 squares on a chess and checkerboard. Here we have 2 and 2. So we need 8 and 8, right? So we will tile this 4 times to get our checkers. All right, so you can see they're a little bit fuzzy. It's not really a great looking map. Let me close that for a second. Let me get perspective view. Looks a little fuzzy here to me on my screen. So if we go to this little plus sign and configure viewports, in here you will see the viewport image and texture display. So we want to maximize our texture maps in our viewport and our environment. So I like to go maybe 4096. Let's just kick it up. If your computer struggles, well, dial it back maybe. So I'm going to apply, say okay, and sharpen it up a little bit. Maybe it's not. I can go to standard and go high quality, and that too will help create a better image if you want to see it while you're working. Right. All right, let's talk about this board while we're in the mapping and texture bits. I'm going to go out onto the internet, and I have Texturecom at speed dial here. And remember, I think I showed you this maybe in another class. Maybe you don't know. All right, textures.com. Great place to get textures for free. I am just going to log in. You can create a new account. Doing this, you see I have 15 free credits I can use every day. And let's see our latest textures. They upload the new textures here. They are now supporting PBR textures, which in your game classes you'll learn more about that. I'm going to come over here and just look for wood. And I'm going to look for fine woods. And let's get something that one would make a nice chessboard. That's not all that fine. Ooh, stacked bamboo. Let's see what else they have in here. We'll just go with this. So I can download this. And I'm going to go to my desktop and where did I have my chessboard? Well, I'm going to just make a folder here on my desktop, chess. And I'm going to save this. I'm going to delete this. I'm just going to do that. Save. All right, I'm going to close. Well, no, I'm not. I'm going to put that back over here. All right, so M, we are going to get another standard out here. And this time we're going to drag a bitmap out here. I'm going to go to my desktop, look at my chess, find wood, open that, connect that to my diffuse. I'm going to take this and drag it over here. Make sure I have that selected, show in viewport. All right, so I'm going to turn off edge faces here for a second. And you can see that it's not really looking like anything great. All right, so what we need to do is map this. And another tool is UVW map. This is a great tool for quickly mapping something. If you bake it into your editable poly, it's a nice start to an unwrap. You can look for it in your modifier list. It is UVW map. I'm going to click on it, my button. So here we don't want a planar situation. Here we want a box. So I'm going to click on box, and it seems like it's still wanting a real world situation problem. I'm going to look at my editable poly. And make sure all right, maybe it's in here. Click on this and extended perimeters. Because if this happens to you, you need to know how to fix it. It's a no. It is a real world. Use real world. No. And reload. I'm just going to do that. View image. So I say view image. Here is the image. So that is correct. And tiling one. Here we go. Environment. We're getting somewhere. Oh no, this is bizarre. Let's look at planar box. Real world map size. There we go. Real world map size. All right. I knew it was a real world something. All right. Here we are. Again, we're going to, anywhere you see the real world thing, just check that off. It's not what we want. It's because it was set up for architectural and we're not using architectural. We are using the units that we want to use. So there we go. To do this, we can say fit. And we might want to align it. Say not like that. It looks like Z or X might be okay. But we need to rotate this. It doesn't seem to want to do this right. So I'm going to go to Gizmo. You know what? Let me show you another trick. I know it's because of the pivot point. We centered it and we rotated this, and so the actual pivot point is odd. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to delete this map, and I'm going to show you a fix to this. So I'm going to go to this Tools, and there is a Reset Xform. So I'm going to click on that. I'm going to click this button, Reset Selected. Then I'm going to go back to the modifier stack, and you'll see that there's this issue. I'm going to collapse all. Yes. Okay, now when we put this UVW map on here and say box, and do this real world, you see now the box is fitting the board. All right, so it's basically we've taken this slab of work and made it such that it's a nice piece of wood with this board. All right, so what we can do now is just collapse that. I'm going to select my pieces. I'm going to go in the front view, select my pieces, and hit W to move them. I'm going to set them down. Go in the top view, move them over. All right, so now I'm going to click on them individually and just place them as though we're playing. All right, P for perspective. So now we have our pieces on this board. Looks like my board might be a little too big. So I'm going to select both. And I'm going to size it down this way, only on the X and Y. W. And notice I'm constraining when I hit these things on only the X and Y, so I'm not moving them up and down. Yeah, these fit a little bit better in there. All right, so this wood texture, let's hit that. I want this to be a nice polished wood. So I'm going to double click on this and make this a glossy thing. And you can see here, there's this gloss. All right, so now in your texture classes, you're going to learn about, here's a specular. You're going to learn about specular. You can see how this is kind of shiny. And also specular maps, diffuse maps, normal maps. There's a bump map that we need to connect a normal map node to, but a real quick, easy way just to see this for fun is to take the same map here and put it on the bump map. So now you can see we get a little bit of a texture here. If you double click on this and you can see this is where our attributes are and scroll down, you also have maps here. It'll probably be closed up. Let me close that. Here's the maps. You can open that up and you see that these channels match these channels. The bump comes in at 30. I'll try 50. That might be a little better. Okay, I'm going to close this. So I'm going to my front view. Now add some lights because we'll see this bump a little bit better with lights. I'm going to go back to my Create tab. Here the light bulb is the lights. Photometric comes in standard now, but we don't want that. We want standard to come in as our standard. We're going to have a target spot. I'm going to just drag this down like this. I'm going to encompass this board. So the way Max works is it has lights in when you're modeling. It has 2 lights in there when you're modeling. So whenever you move it around, you can always see what you're doing. And they change depending on where you move your camera. Because to see any of this, you're looking through a camera. You just don't know it. It's hidden. It's a thing. So when you place a light in here, though, this light now overrides the other 2. And that's why now you're seeing a more directional light and one that when I move this around, it doesn't change. So the dark side is the dark side. Nothing in the real world has something such as this dark unless you're maybe in space and you have no moon or anything reflecting on you. But we want to offset this a little bit, and we'll use an Omni for this. So I'm going to hit T for top, and I'm going to place my Omni right here. Go back to your modifier tab, or else you'll be placing Omnis all over the place. I'm going to hit F for front again, so I can place this kind of down below here to be more of a reflective light. And in as such, when I go to my modifier tab, it's freaking me out that this is so wide. I'm going to go to the intensity color attenuation. I'm not going to mess with the attenuation, but I am going to mess with the color. First of all, I'm going to knock it down and also give it a little bit of a blue hue. Blue hue. So I'll say, okay, it's this color here. So I'm going to do that. And this one, I want shadows on. This, the Omni, I do not want shadows on. And I'm going to go to Advanced Effects because I do not want specular on. We just want to diffuse. We just want it to light. We don't want any. A specular would indicate that there's a light there, and we don't want that to appear that way. We just want it to appear that there is a light. And I think what I'm going to do is actually hit both these corners. So I'm going to move this over here, hold Shift, and I'll say instance for now, which means that if I were to change the color of the light, it would change it for both of them. So, you know, that's good. I can see it has a nice reflectiveness here. The other thing is shadows are not black, and if we leave this, the shadows will be black. So we need to open up our shadow parameters and just lighten that up a little bit. I like to maybe give less weight to the red and the green and let this be a slightly blue tint, or just kind of on the cool side. Maybe add a little bit more green. Don't want it to be too purple. All right, so lastly, to really get a good look at this, we hit P here, P for perspective, and we'll zoom in on this, kind of make an interesting composition. But before we can even do that, we need to know what our area of our camera is. So if I click on perspective, you'll see where it says show safe frames. If we click on that, all of a sudden it shows us exactly the aspect ratio of what the camera is going to take a picture. So if we come up here to our render setup and I click on this, here is our output size, and half of what you need for your reel, 1920 by 1080 is what you'll need. So this would be 960 by 540. Hit enter, and you can see that that aspect ratio allows us a little bit more. I'm going to click on that. So if your thing is like, you know, moving off weird, if you click on something in the scene, then you will rotate about that. So, and I want to get this nice wood texture kind of show. Oh, one more thing I forgot, which is going to make this more excellent, is a reflectivity. Let's open up our materials editor, and you can see here we have a reflection. And we want to put a ray trace in there. So I'm going to move a ray trace out here. Put that into the reflection. Now it's going to look white like this because it's highly reflective right now. It's almost behaving like a mirror. So we want to scroll down here to this reflection and maybe make it 10. Something very, that might even be too much. Let's just do maybe 7. Okay. And what we could even do is, let's move these things over here a little bit. We're just going to give this reflection to all of them. Okay, I can't see that. Reflection. Reflection. Double click on that, open maps, make sure it's 10. Otherwise it's going to look like chrome. If you want it to be chrome, I mean, render it out, you'll see it. It'll look like chrome. Okay, so I'm going to close that. All right, that should be good. Let's see how this goes. This, I can have a smoother in and out of a, it won't be so incremental. All right, so to render this, here's my, here I'm showing you the things and it's off screen. Here's where you change the width. Sorry about that. So here you open this up and if you can see if I move this, the aspect ratio changes. All right, let's Control Z that. 960. Okay, render. Oh, look, they are very shiny, very chrome-esque. Maybe I didn't hit enter on that. I'm going to hit M, and let's see, that was here, the reflection. Oh, I didn't, okay. I think maybe 5 might be good on that, 5. You know, I also want it on the board. Although I don't have the board being quite as shiny. Double click on that. I'll go ahead and make that shiny. 2, let's make everything shiny. We're like crows, we like shiny things. Reflection, all right, double click on this. Open maps. Oops, reflection, maybe 5. Enter, put that away. Render. All right, there we go. So you can see a nice reflection going on in the pieces. I did forget one more thing about the shadow. I'll just set this aside because it has to do with the light. And this light, the shadow map, we want ray traced shadows. All right, let's try this again. We want ray traced shadows. It looks a little weird, the bias right here. So let's see what it really looks like when I think it's going to be more the shadow. This bias. I'll mess with that one. Let's see what it looks like. All right, so our shadows are a little bit better. Yeah, it's not so horrible, right? So the render, so sometimes this can be a little bit of a false, that's not too bad. If it really were looking like that, you probably have seen something like that in video games, and it's the bias that needs to be checked out in its situation. Okay, so let's get a little closer view of this. Something awesome, like you're in it. Although I want some of the wood. So here, I'll render that. Oh, you know, see how we're losing our pieces in the background here? One more thing to fix. I swear, one more thing, and then I'm gonna be, we're done with this. In the rendering tab, you'll see environment, and this color is black, and it should not be. We just want it a little bit, see how this is gray? Matching something like this would be better. So I'm going to say OK. So there we are. Now when I say render, you can see that this is that gray color, and we can see our pieces. And it makes more sense, like maybe there's a light coming in from somewhere. But you can see how putting that in the bump map kind of made this look a little bit more like wood. And some of our reflectivity gives it a more realistic look. We have our nice shadows. We have our nice backlight. So it's all sort of making sense. Wow, that is some gnarly wood. I hope you can find better wood than me. I just grabbed that really quick. All right, so there's that. That's the end of the chess set thing with lights. We didn't do a camera, but you'll get to cameras later. Lights and materials and using some of the different channels and how you can hook up your nodes in here to make it all work. So there's that. Cool, cool, cool.